Welcome to Contemporary Issues in Management. This is an advanced seminar designed to identify and explore the effects of theft, fraud, bribery, and corruption on companies, finances, and employees. We will address these types of activities. Front counter fraud at small brick and mortar stores and restaurants. Embezzlement and employee theft. Intellectual property theft and economic espionage. Ponzi scams and pyramid schemes. Money laundering. Insider trading and government-level fraud, bribery, extortion, and corruption. This is an excellent example of both insider trading and government-level fraud and corruption. However, we will also address ways that managers and executives can combat or prevent theft. One is by recognizing red flags, encouraging whistleblowers, providing good accounting controls, using laws, regulations, and standard operating procedures as guardrails, creating a strong moral culture. And what's the point? Your company is probably going to be affected by fraud or theft at some point. With the tools this class will give you, you may be able to prevent the theft, or if not, recover from it financially and emotionally. Emotionally, because of the shock, guilt, and loss of trust among your employees. According to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, organizations lost $3.1 billion in 2024. In the U.S., COVID-19 fraud ran to $480 million between 2020 and 2022, according to Kelly Richmond Pope, the author of your textbook. The U.S. government is still trying to claw back some of the money that was stolen during the COVID years. So, for example, let me tell you about two frauds I suffered. This first is an example of an accidental perp, to use Kelly Richmond Pope's term. I had a boyfriend, Chuck, who owned a small land surveying company in Manhattan. Instead of buying a car, he rented cars cheaply from Rent-A-Wreck in Manhattan. Rent-A-Wreck we started getting parking tickets soon after Chuck had died, during the time period where he was still alive, and we figured, oh, well, he must have parked his car badly, and we paid them. Then suddenly we started getting, and by the way, I was the executor for his estate. So then we started getting tickets from after he had died and after we had returned the cars. So we wrote to the Department of Transportation and asked for the information on the ticket, because we had just been getting bills. We weren't getting all the information on the ticket. Turned out that all the locations of the parking tickets were near the Rent-A-Wreck offices in Manhattan. So we went to them and said, you have to stop doing that, and you have to pay us back for these tickets that you put against Chuck's name. And the guy in charge, I think probably he was getting into trouble for parking the cars on the street. And so he figured, oh, well, this guy's dead. No one's going to care. Well, it doesn't work that way. So we got the money back from him. Here's another one. The second case of fraud is more intentional. An engineering firm hired Chuck's company to do a survey for them, which was about half done when he died. The survey was along Richmond Terrace on Staten Island. Part of the job was to survey these two strips of grass between sidewalks and the street. This is what one of the strips looks like now, but at the time, the party chief named one of them Mare Stecoris Caninae and the other Mare Stecoris Felini, Latin for sea of dog poop and sea of cat poop. And that's actually what ended up on the map handed in to the Department of Citywide Administrative Services. Anyway, we put in the bill, expecting to be paid, like we had normally been paid. And they came back to us and they said they had done all the work. So they weren't going to pay us for the job. So we went to the Department of Citywide Administrative Services and said, they said that the engineer said that they had done the work. And the gentleman at DCA pulled out the receipts that he had gotten, and there was a timesheet that had obviously been filled in by somebody at the engineering firm. It was all the same handwriting, the same ink, a timesheet over a number of weeks would have different handwriting and different time frames and things like that. And this was all just one sheet. Obviously, they had lied. We never got that money back. Anyway, so, and then here's an example of what happens when you're a whistleblower. Another situation. I was a volunteer with a number of other people on the ship Wayward Tree at South Street Seaport Museum in the 1980s. And there was one volunteer, everybody loved him, Frank. And Frank somehow was always in the middle of disasters. So one night, after all the volunteers had been working all Saturday, he came to the bar where we hung out and said, all the tires were cut. You parked your cars underneath the highway there, and all the tires were cut. And the fish market guys must have done it. Okay. Well, we all went to look, and yes, indeed, the tires were cut. Then another time, a boat was untied, and he came rushing up, and he said, the boat was untied, but the tide was pushing it in, so nothing happened. I tied it back up again. Okay. Then there was a fire on the pier that the Wayward Tree was tied up to. And somehow Frank was the one to notice it and put out the fire. And then the last, and probably the worst, was he also worked with some of us on a Seaport Lines tour boat. And he came running out and he said, somebody had cut the fire hoses on the ship, which is very dangerous. And they were indeed cut. Anyway, at this point, it just seemed like too many coincidences, and myself and two other senior volunteers called up the New York Police Department and ended up talking to two NYC detectives. And we told them the story and told them, who could possibly be the ones to have done all these bits of sabotage. And they said, nah, it's this guy Frank. We'll talk to him. And they did. And he stopped doing these kinds of things. And in fact, he left the seaport. However, were we thanked for stopping all the sabotage? No, of course not. The guy in charge of the volunteer program refused to believe us. Frank was too good. He couldn't have been that. He couldn't have done all that stuff. So there was no real consequences for us as whistleblowers, except that I became a pariah, at least with the head of the volunteers. No big deal. But it's all you're not going to get thanked for being a whistleblower. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. So in this class, let's talk about how the class will work. You will be teaching one another. I'll make sure you have the information you need to answer the week's questions, but most of what we'll do in class is find out from one another what you discovered. Your homework will be based on readings and other activities. The homework is the classwork, obviously, since there are no live classes except for guest speakers, and not everyone will be able to join in every guest speaker session. I will post new assignments on Mondays, with a few exceptions because of holidays and days off, and the deadlines will be the following Fridays to give me time to review your postings. In addition, the class will be divided into 5 groups. Each group will be responsible for one major case study during the course. Please pick your group this week in the People section of Canvas. As you can see, that's what's on the screen here. So there's a large corporation team, medium corporation team, multinational team, a nonprofit team, and a small business team. So pick whatever's your favorite. In this class, using artificial intelligence is fine. For homework this week, you will learn how to use artificial intelligence most effectively to collect information and analyze the issues we're going to address in the class. There's a link to an online course about writing prompts for AI programs in the homework assignment. It's called Generative AI and Prompt Engineering. Please take the course before Monday. Also, note that your writing ability, or actually your editing ability, is important for these reasons. You won't get ahead ever anywhere if you can't write well and clearly. Errors will make your writing difficult to translate, or for people for whom English is a second language, difficult to understand. Keep in mind that you're probably going to be working at some point in your life in a multinational corporation, and being able to write so that everyone can understand you, whatever the language, is important. And then assignments with more than 4 spelling or grammar mistakes will lose points. So the suggestion is write your posting in Word, spell check it, and then copy and paste it into Canvas. Or ask ChatGPT to proofread and edit the posting before you paste it. Again, I will post new assignments on Mondays, with a few exceptions because of holidays and days off, and the deadlines will be the following Fridays. So that's the course in a nutshell. Feel free to email me with any questions. You can also text me at 917-734-3746, 917-734-3746, and that number will be with my resume under the People tag part of Canvas. So look forward to working with you, and have a good day.